Disco Pigs, released in 2001. Director Kirsten Sheridan, stars Elaine Cassidy and Cillian Murphy, Brian O'Byrne, Eleanor Methan and Geraldine O'Rourke. It's set in Ireland. It basically focuses on two Irish teenagers with flashbacks to when they are very young in sort of kindergarten school. They live next door to each other, boy and girl, and they've grown very, very together as a friendship, and it's also quite self-destructive, the relationship, and they buck the establishment, and in school they're a source of big headaches for the staff. To cut a long story short, there's a decision made with one of each of the parents that the two, Runt and Pig, need to be separated, and so Runt is relocated to a boarding school. Pig is considered to be beyond any help. He's played by Cillian Murphy. I've just stepped back into it and witnessed at a sort of rave type disco, a vicious attack by Pig on another boy for dancing with Runt. He considers her to be queen and him to be king, and this seems to be the gist of this particular tale. After the incident at the rave disco, they come home, part company at the door, next door neighbours of course, and then we proceed to hear Pig get into a monologue which is extremely illustrative of sensuality, with a degree of sort of sexual pleasures thrown in, almost akin to a fantasy, which is very, I guess, akin to that age group. I'm sure you'll remember. Brilliant acted by Cillian. Runt moving on, forced to move away, has a tremendous impact on Pig, and he basically is so distraught he can't function at all. He displays behaviour more akin to a 5-year-old with his younger sister, and on his own he's just an emotional mess without her being around. We then switch to the special school where Runt is, and she's palled up with a girl in her dorm, and the pal is quite ingenious and sets off the fire extinguisher, the automatic water sprinkler, so that they can have a smoke and it be undetected. The reprimand for the girls is succinct, slap round the face. Runt responds by having a piss on the floor, and it also seems to have impacted on her period. We then follow Pig as he almost gets hit by vehicles as he launches himself across a 3-lane road. He's clearly twisted and mixed up, and is in a pretty poor state. The school's in County Donegal. When Pig gets to the railway station, he asks for a ticket for Donegal, one way. But of course there's a town called Donegal. He appears unclear about what he wants, to the ticket operator. We then get a series of events back in time when the two as very young children started to grow their friendship, and this wasn't approved by the father, by I think Runt's father, who spent a lot of time guzzling beer. After we see a beating dished out to his daughter, Pig then gets retribution by killing all the man's favoured birds that he keeps as a hobby. Another tale to show the evolution of this friendship. The boy, when the girl is punished by being put in the boot of the car, by the time the parent gets back to the car with a suitcase, Pig has opened the boot and got run out, and they've disappeared. And when the father arrives at his ex-wife's place, of course there's no one there, so that provokes a massive hunt for the missing girl, whilst Pig smugly looks over from distance to see all the chaos that's entailed. Remember, this boy is probably no more than 6 years old. The mystery is solved when we realise that Pig has moved Runt into another car that arrives at his mother's, I think, and of course the father, I don't think it's a relative, and once he pops the back up, out pops Runt. It's all rather like a sort of fairy tale. Pig's been reciting this story to a man on a bus as he's heading to Donegal. There's a rich Irish accent throughout this film. Some of the words are not familiar really to me, although of course the language is English. They're sort of local dialects, but it's very well acted. They're in this cafe, him and the man who shared the story with. The man's smoking. Another guy on an adjoining table is out of cigarettes and decides to take advantage, comes to the table, helps himself to a cigarette and gets a bit of a shock when Pig picks up a fork and drives it right through his hand. Yeah, it's pretty violent stuff. Runt's cherishing the photos of her with Pig. Pig is getting closer. He's now done some hitchhiking and is boarding another bus. We then see Pig's exhilaration when he spots the large building school light in the sort of woodland area. He knows that she's there, and he eventually gets the bus driver to stop and he sprints towards it. So on her birthday they are reunited and he encourages her to go to Cork. They hit the local moth licence and Pig just completely goes off the rails, smashing the place to pieces. He assaults the kid. They then move on to the bar. He starts to get well oiled and her expression is changing as she looks at him.
Be pretty, Pig.
Then, as it's a karaoke joint, we get a rendition of You Really Got Me by Pig 2 Runt. A war breaks out between Runt and another girl, and it's really nasty whilst Pig's singing and glass is broken. And move on to a sort of more uptown disco type of scenario. As Pig continues to exaggerate, fantasize about their relationship. Runt is trying to keep it sort of lower key. There's a very hypnotic soundtrack score which is quite enchanting. Pig goes to the loo and he's full of sort of anguish and unhappiness. He's not comfortable in his own shoes. Whilst he's away, the other lad who was at the bar has moved into the place and spots Runt. Pig comes out of the toilet, spots Runt with the boy on the dance floor and grabs a glass ashtray and smacks it into his skull. Complete bedlam follows. He completely goes berserk, crushing this guy's head, and then he gets hold of a stick of some description, a metal pipe, and starts hitting him. He's clearly killing the bloke. He's completely crazed, like psychotic, really menacingly dangerous. They escape to a beach area, and there's a prophetic sort of clarity of blues, the colour of love, and then Runt smothers him. So Eat, Pray, Love has got a real hammering in 2010 when it was released. It stars Julia Roberts as Elizabeth Gilbert, based on a memoir by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's co-written and directed by Ryan Murphy. The basic plot is a woman realises she's not getting what she wants out of life, and after a painful divorce sets out on a journey of self-discovery that takes her around the world. It rings a few bells, to say the least. In the cast, Julia Roberts is Elizabeth Gilbert. Javier Bardem plays Philippe, a man Gilbert falls in love with on her journey. Billy Crudup is Stephen Gilbert's former husband. Richard Jenkins, a Texan whom Gilbert befriends at an Indian ashram. Viola Davis is Delia's best friend. Her name's Delia and she's Gilbert's best friend, sorry. James Franco plays David. And just looking down the cast, yeah, there's quite a few others, but that would seem to be the gist of it. In the early parts of the movie, Liz goes to a bit like a sort of tribal doctor, a witch doctor, a shaman, because she's basically wanting some advice, even though she's a psychologist, and she works with Cambodian refugees, and this gets her feeling, and we witness a short dialogue with this Cambodian witch doctor, and where we become aware of the wish box. Her wish box is related to travel, and another woman's wish box, her friend, is related to children, but both
require commitment. She feels trapped in a life that she doesn't believe in, and she starts praying to substitute for what she's not getting, and that's as far as I got. The film was filmed in a number of locations: New York, Rome, Pataudi in India, and Bali in Indonesian. The film certainly provokes one's evaluation of one's life choices, and although it's sort of in the journey, it sort of paints almost a pretty picture of these idyllic settings, which is probably not too realistic. It cost $60 million to make, but made a profit of $20 million. 6 months after her meeting with the Cambodian shaman, or whatever you call them, she's at a party with her husband, and she meets her friend Viola Davis, who's just had a baby, and she starts asking about the time when her friend wanted to have a baby or conceived a baby, and her friend shares a box that she keeps or she started keeping way before she became pregnant, where she was sort of believing in the certain desire and fact that she wanted a child, and in the box are all these little things that she's put away for a future child. And Gilbert then realises she's got a similar sort of box, but it's full of sort of travel destinations. Robert's monologues as Gilbert and poses the question: the only thing more impossible than staying was leaving. In her thought process about the fact that her marriage was dissolving around her, commitment to it was disappearing fast, and that was being echoed by her husband's plan to go back to school, landing her with the responsibility of the finances, and the shaman had predicted that she'd lose all her money. We witness a tearful Roberts speaking for the first time to God with her hands in a praying formation, and she starts to splutter with tears as she goes through it. So Gilbert hits it off with David, a yogi from Yonkers, as a side what's the word? Hustle. Messy divorce agreements with just 3 people, the husband not having an attorney. An interesting alteration on it. He refusing to agree to a divorce. It's quite amusing. Another relationship starts to crack. David with Gilbert, and back on track is the trip to Italy, the travel bug. A way of getting back on track. We get Gilbert's rudimentary Italian as she negotiates room rental with this middle-aged Italian buxom type who gives her a lecture on no strange men and why she's divorced. It's quite amusing. Liz finds an Italian teacher to improve her Italian, and we also get an inkling of her Italian teacher wanting to do more than teach the language. Very stereotypical view of Italian men. I can't understand why this film bombed so much. It's really got lots of quality in it. There's a beautiful scene in the Barbers where these Italian males, middle-aged, are trying to explain to Liz, is it, about Italians differing from the Americans is because they know how to enjoy life. It's ingrained, whereas the Americans burn themselves out working and then try and seek out entertainment when they're completely washed up and end up watching TV. And we witness her eating spaghetti for breakfast. It's grossly obese but beautiful. And then the flower stalls and the vegetable stalls on the street. Marvellous. We get a sample of cuisine in Rome, and then with her friend, the one she met in the bar, they flee off to Naples. A hilarious little scene after gross indulgence with pizzas in Napoli. Roberts buys some new jeans, and with the help of the assistant just manages to button it up by lying flat on the floor and squeezing her thighs in. It's very, very funny. Liz, in monologue, writes a letter to David reflecting on the benefits of being apart rather than staying together and dwelling in unhappiness. After a nice farewell dinner, the next phase, Liz is in India. The cacophony of noise, the chaos on the streets. Liz comes across Richard Jenkins in India and has various short conversations, arguments with him, as she desperately tries to get into the idea of freeing the mind. So Richard Jenkins and Liz dip into the cultural experience of a Hindu wedding. Liz gets a flashback to her wedding day at the reception, when the first dance together turned up into a show by her husband to the song that's Dance to a Celebration. Was it by Casey and the Sunshine Band? Can't remember. Richard shares a story when he came home one night, or that time, roaring drunk at the wheel, turned into the driveway, and his young son was sitting right in the way. His son miraculously managed to get away, but it shook him up. His wife witnessed the whole event, and the next morning she and her son had gone, leaving Jenkins alone. Liz says goodbye to Richard. Her vow of silence ends quickly when she has to be a sort of host. She has an experience, a unique experience with a white elephant. And then we see her cycling in the sort of rice fields. Liz has now got to Bali. She reconnects with this guy she met in New York. See you later, alligator. And she's getting more divine balance. But Liz gets knocked off her bike by Javier Bardem in a jeep. She then goes for some Balinese medicine. So Liz, after getting her leg cleaned up, goes to a party, meets Javier Bardem and knocked her over. Also meets another guy. Typical party atmosphere, Western music. Brings back memories of Brazilian Bardem, his Australian son, and Liz make up a predictable triangle really as they go biking. In Bali, Liz and Bardem get their act together. The love affair between the two burns out quickly as he wants commitment and she doesn't want commitment. Her balance is being without, his balance is being with.